Talk about the opportunity that you had in Insall as being this fellowship. I know it's unique. I think that other orthopedic surgeons know about the uniqueness of it and the prestige of it, what you brought home or what impacts you still to this day.
Yeah, so I was 5 years into practice. You come out of fellowship seeing a couple different ways to do it. We had a couple different guys that we worked with, and I actually will credit Dr. Barrick, who's at WashU, and Laurie Barnes at Arkansas. Laurie had come for visiting professor, and kind of an interesting story. I took him to a place in Lexington, and I got him this bacon appetizer, which he thought was hilarious that a guy from Arkansas, I'm bringing him this caramelized bacon, and they serve it with gooey peanut butter. And so it comes to the table, and literally he takes a bite. He goes, "We'll need more because this is mine."
That's so good.
So talking with Laura, he goes, "You got to do this Insall Fellowship. It's going to really change how you think about things because you're going to see many different ways to kind of skin the cat." So luckily through Dr. Barrick and Dr. Barnes, they had recommended and did my recommendations letter. And so it was through them that I more or less got accepted, with Dr. Scott calling me in clinic saying, "Hey, we want you to come spend 5 weeks traveling the country, learning from the brightest minds on knee stuff." And it's really hard to take time away from your practice because most of the time, if you do this, you're footing the bill. What better way? And that's what Dr. Insall said is, I want my legacy to continue. And what a tremendous opportunity is to travel with 3 other people. I was with Peter Skolko, who's at HSS, Derek Omantula at Stanford, and then another Stefano from Italy. And it was just a wonderful experience to be able to go through everything with those 3 guys, but also to see the breadth of East Coast to West Coast while getting to know everybody.
You shared with me that if you weren't an orthopedic surgeon, then you'd be a bike mechanic. So give us the full circle explanation of that, your history with cycling. I know it's not a throwaway line. And I do think that there's some alignment there between your statement of being a bike mechanic and being an orthopedic surgeon. And so how does that mechanic instinct show up in how you process your surgery? And is there anything about surgery and cycling that you go, what a perfect apprenticeship one or the other is?
One, in terms of being a bike mechanic, you have to understand all the parts. You can't say, "Well, I know how to fix a tire, but if my rim is out of alignment, I guess I got to take it to the shop." Or, how did the brakes work now with electronic braking and whatnot? You have to know how all the moving parts work. In surgery, you can't know just, "I only know how to do this part of this case," or if when I do hip scopes, how do I troubleshoot if the camera's not working that day? You have to know all the parts. And if you don't, I think you put your patient at risk for potentially complication. In terms of how does cycling and the OR go together, I'd never get on my bike without checking to make sure everything worked. Is the tire pressure right? What tire pressure did you need for that very given day? Is the derailleur, is everything lined up so the shifting is perfect? And a lot of it is I trust no one, but I trust myself. And so when I get to the OR, same thing. Before I get ready for a DA hip, does the bed work? Basic things. Does it go up and down? But is everything kind of like a pilot? You're not going to take off in a plane and assume that the tires are fine, everything's fine. You're checking to make sure everything's perfect so that more or less you have a smooth landing.
COVID caused a lot of surgeons to pause at a minimum. And for the best of them, it caused surgeons to reimagine how they fit within an existing ecosystem. And I know that you published a paper during COVID where I'd like for you to unpack for me what was the intent about reshaping surgery meets industry relationship. And then is there anything about that paper as we fast forward from COVID not being literally in our face, present tense, that you still believe that there are some people in our field of orthopedic surgery, they're just not ready to accept?
Yeah. So in large part, once the shutdown of the world sort of happened, meetings didn't exist. And so the academy that year was postponed and a lot of stuff went virtual. And where a lot of the funding comes from is obviously industry for a lot of these meetings. And so it became how are we going to work this out in terms of how are we going to do the academy meeting? How are we going to do AUKUS meetings? Because the exhibitor hall is where I mean, we get it. That's where people get to see new products and whatnot. And to this day, still, if you like look at the academy attendance this past year, attendance is still down and people like virtual meetings. And so trying to figure out that ongoing relationship where we want the in-person stuff, and I get that, but I think we still need to figure out how can we do this virtually and make it beneficial both from an industry standpoint, but also for the surgeons who maybe can't take as much time away and travel to different places for different meetings that in reality, and some of us need to stay and continue to provide care, but we also need the CME and education part. That's, I think, what we're still evolving to try and figure out as we move forward.
You made academic choices like every other surgeon, so throw in Vanderbilt, Wash U, some HSS time with Brian Kelly. If you're giving advice to a slightly younger Dr. Duncan about how people should make career decisions, is there anything that you would tell other surgeons who are figuring out their where that might help them to navigate their way?
When you're trying to find a job, one, you got to figure out location. I mean, I grew up in the North and said I'd never move back to a place that you don't see the sun or the light of day for months on end. And so one is location. So that's why I was always going to be, I was going to be somewhere not too far north, but not too far south. Yeah, I want some seasons. Part two is, I mean, obviously we have to get paid for what we do. And so whatever salary it is, you have to be comfortable with that. And then the third part is the job. And you kind of know the environment when you're there and the people, and either want to go to work and you like them. And the worst thing is that because you're going to spend more time with them than your family that you'd ever see, is you have to be willing and wanting to go to work and not eyeing the clock and going, this is going to be the next 12 hours misery.
You and I shared some shared experience in shuffling off to Washington, D.C. on the healthcare policy side, you on the ACA side. And what is it that you learned from that experience? It's one thing to say, well, orthopedic surgeons, that's someone else's job is to help shape policy. My sense is you kind of took the approach of there's got to be a surgeon in the room. If we don't have a surgeon in the room, if not me, then whom? Then we're not going to be able to shape health policy. What would you say that experience taught you? And then number two, are there any consequences of other orthopedic surgeons not being involved that you want to say, it's not too late for us?
Well, one, I had no clue how the process worked. You go through all your training and you're so heavily dependent upon learning the book stuff. But then medicine has gotten to the point where it is also a business. At the end of the day, you still want to take care of patients, but you have to be able to be involved in the policy to still be able to do that. And so that's where going to like Chicago and understanding how the CPT codes get valued. There's always going to be the zero sum game. Someone's taking from some codes because of you have to have the budget to be balanced. And that's where it then comes into is educating the people that are then voting on your behalf. And so meeting with your senators, meeting with your House of Representatives so that their staff is educated so that they can vote, because we are a voting member, but they have to have education and know what they're going to be voting on. So that I always tell the senators and Republicans, you may have a medical problem at some point. You want the best taken care of you, maybe vote in that best interest.